Hello guys and welcome to my channel. I decided to devote today's episode to building a desktop computer. It's time to upgrade and I figured that it would be useful to film a video about the process sharing my experience. The components you can see on my desktop were carefully selected and every one of them has a very specific purpose, which is the maximum performance. It concerns medium class builds that are very good for gaming and work purposes. During the video, I will be explaining the rationale behind the hardware components selection and how you can put all of them together. In the final part of the video, I will explain the overclocking basics and the way you can get the most out of this or similar configuration. Okay, let's start with the core part of the build, which is the processor. So you normally select the processor first and then everything else. So the motherboard and the other components. This time I decided to assemble the build around Intel Core i9 processor, which comes in a funny collector's packaging. This is a 10-core processor. The model is 10900K. The letter K at the end means unlocked, which is very good for overclocking. The claimed peak single core frequency is 5.3 GHz, which is based around 14 nanometer Comet Lake S architecture. The base frequency is 3.7 GHz, and by overclocking we'll try to gain at least 5. The overclocking is heavily depends on the motherboard as well as the cooling system, which comes next in this brief review. Alright, the next step is the motherboard. As the label suggests, this MSI motherboard is based on Intel Z490 chipset with the top level Core i9 featuring 10 cores along with hyper-threading. The ability to deliver clean, continuous power is going to be one of the primary factors that separates a good motherboard such as this Mag Unify board from the competitors. It's tailored for enthusiasts and overclockers, completely black, and focuses on VRM, thermal design and power delivery. Z490 Unify is PCI 4 ready and features 16-phase VRM on 6-layer board. There are also 2.5 gigabit LAN and built-in Wi-Fi 6, as well as triple M2 slot with heatsinks and even a physical RGB off switch. As mentioned before, it's a perfect fit for a top-shelf processor like i9-10900K, and my aim here is not to review this beautiful motherboard, even though it really deserves a separate review. There are plenty of reviews you can find on YouTube already. Instead, I'll leave the link to a good article so you can read more about it. Next in our brief review comes DDR4 memory from Corsair. Even though I like the configurable RGB lighting, that was not my major selection criteria. This memory is based on Samsung B-die chips, and I can guarantee that experienced overclockers understand what that means. It means that it offers exceptional speed, high reliability, and low energy consumption. It's very good for overclocking purposes and building high performance computer systems. At the end of the video, I will show how you can check the components this memory is based upon, as well as some other useful information. M2 SSD is another component of our system. As mentioned, the motherboard has 3 M2 slots with heatsinks, and that would be weird not to use at least one of them. 970 EVO Pro from Samsung has one of the best ratings among competitors and offers an excellent performance. The cooling system of choice is MSI Core Liquid 240R. My selection criteria were simple. I was looking for the best compatibility, best reviews, and minimum noise level. The cooling system from MSI has all those capabilities. Power supply is another component of the build. The Seasonic PX750 isn't that cheap, to be honest. It rather belongs to a medium range pricing category, just like the other components of this build, aside from probably the processor, but it's absolutely worth it. It offers superb overall performance, is quiet, employs fully modular cabling, and fits in a compact enclosure I will be talking about next. My recommendation: don't select power supply basing on the highest capacity. Yes, you can certainly purchase a 1000 watt power supply, but it will have lots of excess capacity. My recommendation is to perform the system sizing using the one of the system capacity calculators available online. So you know what power supply you need, plus 50 watt on top, maybe. For this build, the optimal power supply is 750 watt. And finally, the case. Be Quiet Pure Bass 500DX is an easy to use mid-tower ATX, or chassis in the other words, with lots of included extras and great thermal performance. All you need to know is that it comprised of quality components to keep noise levels down under the load. It has 3 included Pure Wings fans. It has excellent thermal performance, lots of RGB. It's extremely easy to work in. It has front USB 3.1 and G2 Type-C ports. And I like the form factor and the way the manufacturer offers to do the cable work. And it comes in 2 colors, white and black, and I will be talking more about it along the way. Right, you may ask, heck, what about the graphics card? And you are absolutely correct. It's not included, and this is something I will be bringing over from my existing machine. It's Asus GeForce GTX 1660, and the thing is, I'm not a big gamer, so I'm not inclined to devote too much attention to this particular component, but GTX 1660 is a pretty decent graphics card, but you're absolutely free to replace it with the one of your choice. I will be putting links under the video for the graphics card. I think worthwhile to consider. Good, so we come to an end of our review, and I can't wait to get started with the build. Alright, I remove the side tempered glass panel and we are inside the case. So we can see immediately all 3 fans, one on the back, another one on top, and the last one at the front. I recommend to remove the one on the back temporarily so we can mount the motherboard. The one on top we should be moving to the front, just because we're gonna be mounting our cooling system to the top, and there is no room for this fan over here. So we're gonna have 2 fans working for the air ingress, and the one at the back for the air egress. So the next, you're gonna need to assess the mount points for the motherboards. There are 9 of them in the chassis, and if you take a closer look at the motherboard, you will notice there are also 9 mount points on the motherboard. And as far as I can see, it's a perfect match, so you don't need to change anything in the chassis. So let's get the fans removed and motherboard mounted. Okay, the motherboard is in, and I didn't fix it just yet. Another piece of advice before we start: don't disregard reading the instructions. The one from Be Quiet is pretty decent. It comes in multiple languages, and also a set of screws that's coming with the case. We're gonna be using those 32 screws in order to fix the motherboard. Let's do this now. Then get the fan back and start attaching the cables to the motherboard. The one in the middle doesn't require a screw, so be attentive to avoid damaging your motherboard, and do not apply too much force. Okay, I installed the fan back, and now I need to install another one. I removed from the top to the front side of the case. I will be removing the front panel over here, so it can be easily removed just by pulling. And after the fan installation, I will remove the SSD mount here in order to connect the USBs from the front panel to the motherboard. Alright, beautiful. So the fans are attached, and as the next step, I will be installing the power supply. So as you can see, it's fully modular, and at first I will need to connect the power for the motherboard, for the CPU, and for the PCI Express. So now I will be removing the back plate from the back of the case, installing the power supply, and do the cabling. Okay, so I inserted the power supply, and it was pretty easy. So the beauty of this case is that you detach the back plate with screws over here, then attach it to the power supply and simply insert it and screw it back. So now I need to attach some cables to a modular power supply, and over here on the back there is plenty of room to do so. For the purpose, I need to get multiple cables. So first I need to power the processor, and another one for the PCI Express. They can be easily attached because they all have the respective marking. So the one that ends with PSU means power supply, and that being said, you need to attach this end to the power supply, these two to the CPU, and this one to PCI Express respectively. So let's do that. Alright, once we are done with the power supply, we are good to go with assembling our cooling system. As mentioned, this build is based on Core Liquid 240R from MSI, and we'll be assembling this cooling system for Intel LGA 1200 socket, and for that purpose you would need this bracket from the set, the backplate with Intel label on it, 4 washers, 4 bolts, 4 spacers, and 4 spring bolt nuts. So let's start assembling. So first you'll need to get this bracket and get it positioned properly. Attach it to the pump. Next we'll need this backplate and the bolts. There are multiple holes on the sides, and as you can see, the bolt is flat on one side, so that means you need to attach it properly so it doesn't spin. Take one of the washers and affix it in a way so it holds tight, so like this. So let's do all 4 of them. Next, once this is done, we are good to attach this backplate to the back of the motherboard, and from the other side we will need to fix the backplate with these spacers. As you can see, they are have some texture inside, so they should hold tight on the bolts. Let's do this next. Okay, we are done attaching our backplate, and this is how it looks like now. So right now we are good to insert the CPU. Let's remove this plastic cap from here. And insert the processor. And make sure the bracket goes under this bolt and fix it like this. Alright, so next we'll be attaching our cooling system. So it will be attached like this to the top. Make sure that the wire goes behind it, and this wire should be attached to a pump fan over here. Also, as long as we have 2 fans for the cooling pump, we'll be using this splitter, and it needs to be inserted in the CPU fan socket. And over here we'll insert the our 2 fans. Let's do this next. Alright guys, so the cooling system is attached, and here's the first problem. So once I put the fans on, I won't have a space to attach a pump fan and the RGB lighting. So that being said, before I do so, I would need to attach the pump to a CPU, attach the RGB lighting, the pump fan, and only then bolt the other 2 fans onto the cooling system. So let's attach the water pump first. So I'm gonna need to remove this sticker from here. Then you would need a thermal paste. I would recommend to use this one, IC diamond compound, because I believe this is one of the best on the market in terms of thermal conductivity. But you are also free to use the paste that's coming along with the cooling system. No issues with this one as well. So in order to attach the pump, I only need a tiny fraction of the compound. It's very dense. Okay, like this. And let's get the pump attached. And using the spring bolts, let's bolt it on. Alright guys, so our cooling system is installed, looks good, and I think at this step our system is ready for the first run. So let's get it connected. Turn the power on, press the power button, and it looks awesome. So the system works, but the only problem I see, there is a flashing indicator that tells me that there is a problem with duram, which is alright, just because we don't have our DDR modules installed just yet. So first let's get the RGB lighting connected, and then we can insert DDR4 modules. In order to get the RGB lighting connected, I pulled all the wires from the other end, and this is our splitter for the cooling fans. So let's get them connected first. This is the connector from the cooler, first one, and there must be a second one somewhere. That's the second one. And now I need to connect my RGB lighting. So I will be connecting them using so-called daisy chain. This is a male connector that comes from the water pump. So basically it's connected to the source of energy right now, to the source of power, in order to get it connected, I would advise to remove those caps from both fans, get them connected together. I need to connect this to the power supply. It comes from the pump, and we had another one. This is for the RGB lighting on the motherboard. Okay, this is not everything, just because there is a front panel lighting that needs to be connected as well. So there is a connector with the SATA label on it, and we need to connect it directly to the power supply using respective connector type. That's it, and we can give it another try. So let's connect to the power supply, turn it down, press button. Oh, that's beautiful. It's awesome look, guys. And let's take a look inside. Everything's connected. You see how beautifully it looks. I like it. So let's insert DDR4 modules next. Okay, we are done with memory modules installation. The only caveat here is that this case is so compact that you may want to remove this fan first in order to get those DDR modules installed. So now, as long as they are in place, we can proceed with SSD's installation. So first I will be installing the 2.5-inch SSDs and HDDs I already have. So they can be installed into this HDD cage, or there are two other mounting points for the SSDs from the other side of the case. I already pre-installed them like this, and you can absolutely do the same. But the only issue is that I didn't have these brackets. They are not coming along with the case, and you will need to purchase them separately. I already have the power cable connected, so everything I need to do is to return this cage back from the other side of the case. Next, I will be installing the M2 SSD on the motherboard. Let's do this right now. For this, I need to unscrew this heatsink. Okay. And insert the module. As you can see, I removed the sticker from here. I need thermal pads to be attached directly to those chips. And in order to secure it, you need to use one of the tiny screws that are coming along with the motherboard. Let's do this. So don't forget to remove this protective film from the heatsink, and you're good to return it back. Okay, perfect. So next we'll be installing the graphics card to this slot here. Alright, let's get the graphics card installed. So to do so, we need to remove the protective cover and just attach the graphics card, and just to see what brackets from behind we need to remove. So it seems like we need to remove these two from here. Okay, so let's screw. Let's get the graphics card attached now. Okay, it's clicked, very good sign. You can screw it back in order to secure it. Awesome. And now I need to attach the power cord to the graphics card. Perfect. So I think the computer is ready for another test run. Let's see. Awesome, it works, and I think we are good to go to the next step, which is the system configuration. So if you have Windows 10 already installed to your SSD, you can migrate your disk. If you don't, you will need to install it in order to proceed with configuration. Alright, let's do this next. And here's the final look, guys, and to be honest, looks awesome. Okay guys, as discussed before, in this last part of the video I want us to switch from the hardware part to a software one. So we agreed that I will show you a couple of tricks related to overclocking, and for that we need to load the BIOS. In order to do that, whenever the computer loads, hit the delete button like frenzy, and you will see this the window like this. This is MSI BIOS 5, and this is a default configuration for the one. In order to start configuring, you can basically do a lot right from here, and to be honest, a lot of users just end up with using the XMP profile, as it's called, in order to boost the DDR performance, and we'll come to that a bit later. And same goes to the CPU. So if you are not a big fan of overclocking, yes, this is the right way to go, and probably the safest one, because once you start doing the overclocking, it will be on your risk, on your own risk. To begin with overclocking, you need to switch to advanced settings, F7. So you will see easy mode, and we are interested in OC, overclocking settings, over here. And as you can see, the adjusted duram frequency right now is 2133 MHz, and you can boost it as per specification from Cursor. As mentioned before, these memory modules are based upon Samsung VDI chips, which are very good for overclocking, and you can play with the settings. So at first, before we begin, let's take a look what XMP profile changes. So if you click on it, get back to the settings, you can see immediately that the frequency has changed to 3600 megahertz, and you will see the borderline settings for these memory modules. This is actually the factory recommended settings, and If you are not satisfied with those, you can play around with the settings, which we will do. So once you apply this setting, it's a good practice to save your configuration and see if the computer loads, and if it is, you can proceed with stress testing for your system. So what we can do here, let's go ahead straight to the changing these presets. So I want to change the base clock speed, and for that we'll need to go to advanced duram configuration over here, and this is basically the values, the command read. This is the values you can play with, and as a good practice, you normally take the base values like those you saw on the screen, 18, 22, 22, 42, and you work with them from there. So let's do that first. So I will change default settings to those you saw on the screen. And also I will change the voltage to 1.35 volts. Okay, so let's hit F10 in order to save our settings. Yes, and we need to check if the system loads. Okay, the system loads, which is good, and I just rebooted the system and returned to back to BIOS settings to overclocking window in order to keep experimenting. So what I can do, it's a good practice to try and increment duram frequency. So let's increment it to 3700 and see if the system loads and if we need to change anything in the settings over here. Again, as a good practice, you normally increment all these values by 1, and TRAS value is normally twice as big from TCL. Also, before even incrementing those, what you can try is to boost the voltage a little bit, maybe to 140, and see if it helps. So let's save our settings and see systems loading, which is good. So let's take a look at Task Manager in order to check the settings. Performance tab, and as you can see, the speed is set right now to 3700 megahertz, just like we wanted. So what you can do, basically what you should do is to run some stress tests in order to make sure the system works as expected. And for the purpose, you can use AIDA64. You can download it for free and use it for 1 month. In here, we need to select Tools, System Stability Test, select Stress System Memory, and hit Start. So normally, you would wait from 10 to 15 minutes in order to make sure the system performs as expected. And if you set your CPU, duram frequency too high, well, it would be good if you can run the test a bit longer. So I won't be running it until the end. So I think you've got the point, and as the next step, I can get back to BIOS settings, increase duram frequency to 3800, and repeat the same. If it works as expected, that's good. It means that we can move forward. So with the other tests, let's do that. All right, so I just rebooted the system, and as mentioned before, the only value I changed in the BIOS settings was the DDR frequency, which is 3800 right now, as you can see. So at this point, it would be good to run not only a system stability test, but also a benchmark, just to measure what we achieved from those changes. And using the very same tool, AIDA64, you can go to Tools, find Cache and Memory Benchmark, and start it. So let's wait for a while. It won't take long, and we'll see the results immediately. Okay, so the very important parameters here with regard to memory is the read-write speed and latency, which is being measured. So it's 64.6 nanoseconds, which sound cool, but what did we achieve? So specifically for this video, I performed the very same measure before I boosted DDR frequency, and I will show you these values right now. So as you can see on this screenshot, the latency value before was 65.9, and after the change it's 64.9 nanoseconds. So we basically improved the performance for 1 nanosecond. You can see slightly different read and write speeds, so they improved a bit as well. But overall, guys, in all honesty, you won't feel this change working with your workstation. So the bottom line is that you can keep experimenting, but overall it won't bring you any noticeable improvement. I stopped my overclocking at 38 megahertz, and this performance for me is quite satisfactory, because I just don't want to spend any more time with on the experiments. So next we'll talk about the other applications that could be useful for tweaking the system and the CPU speed as well. Now, what you can do, you can go ahead and download MSI Dragon Center from the download area at MSI, and this would be your command center. Basically, you can see the CPU usage, CPU frequency, the RAM frequency. We just configured over here the core temperature and many other useful settings and metrics. And in order to boost the CPU performance, you can use one of these scenarios over here. Those are predefined, and I've got my computer set to extreme performance, which gives 4900 megahertz in average, which is cool, and it kind of defeats the need to do the overclocking. However, you can still play with CPU overclocking because this model is very flexible. So what you can do in here, you can also play with lighting settings. I know that my cooling system is connected to J Rainbow 2 port on the motherboard, which is somewhere over here, and you can basically select the color, and I've got mine set to static, and this is what I'm experiencing right now. So looks very effective. Also, in order to configure the lighting for the memory models, you can use a called ICU util from Cursor. Once installed, it will discover your memory models right away, and you can play around with lighting effects. There are tons of them, so you can select whatever you want and play with colors, and once you save it, yeah, it will take effect immediately. Here's one caveat though. Whenever you have MSI Dragon Center installed, the changes you've done in ICU may not take effect. That's because in the settings over here, you may have the third-party RGB radio button set to true, and you would need to disable this setting because it will be overriding with whatever you got set in ICU app. That's basically it. So hopefully guys, you liked the video. Please subscribe, hit like, leave your comments. Also, in order to provide you more details about this build, I will leave the links to Amazon and the hardware components I used in this video below. Thanks again, and see you soon.